Welcome to the Made for Agriculture podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode for the Made for Agriculture podcast. I'm your co-host Landry Jones, and today we are going to be bringing you the first of many to come bi-weekly reports of crop reports and what's happening around our territory. Today we've got our staff agronomists with us today. Co-hosting with me this time is Scott Wilburn, our senior staff agronomist, and then we've got a couple other individuals, Jesse Surface and Craig Russell, our agronomists around the state. And so before we kind of get into what's happening around our territory as far as the crop report, why don't we being that this is our first one and maybe people aren't used to listening to these in the past, why don't we kind of go around the horn and just update everybody who you are and where you're at in the state. And Jesse, you're kind of in the upper right, so why don't you kick it off for us?
Yes, I'm Jesse Surface. I cover Southeast Missouri and Northeast Arkansas, which would be our District 10.
Scott?
I'm Scott Wilburn. I cover our central region, so basically St. Louis to Kansas City.
I'm Craig Russell. I cover our northern territory, so northern Missouri and southern Iowa.
All right. Well, appreciate y'all joining us today and everyone listening. I guess, before we kind of get started into going around the horn here and what y'all are seeing in the fields, our weather this year has been abnormal to say the least. We were talking about it here before we hit record, and I can't remember even statewide, right? Craig's up in the northwest part of the state, northern part of the state, and he's talking about it being 80 there today. I'm in the southwest part of the state, and it's at least 80 down here. It just seems like this year the weather has been abnormally warm and in some places abnormally dry. But I also know it's been wet. We're starting to get some moisture, and it looks like the short-term forecast, so to speak, over the next week or two is kind of unsettled weather, which we need. But I know there's a lot of people that are out running pretty hard right now to try to get crops in the ground. So that brings a lot of different issues, this early in the year, not only to what crops may be planted like wheat, but what we're trying to do currently moving forward, trying to get crops in the ground. So I guess let's just kind of kick it off. Jesse, since you started us off with your introductions, give us kind of an update of what you're seeing in your territory.
Yeah. We were talking about it earlier. I'm the one who's kind of mentioned it to Landry earlier that we're super dry. Like, this is the driest I've ever seen it in my, I think, 20 years being an ag now. I run a report Monday, and they said we're like 9 inches behind to date, which doesn't sound like much, but when you put it in percentage, we're 50% behind on rain right now. So which is good for last week. There was a lot of hard running, a lot of stuff planted, but now we're running into some predicaments, or we got some ground running out of moisture in the plant. So guys are hanging up on it or running to some heavy dirt and trying to plant for as long as they can. And like, for example, every couple of years we got to water wheat, but this year we've already watered wheat twice. We've got some canola that we watered twice. And just kind of a one-off, I have some crawfish farms not too far from my house, and I think he's watered every crawfish pond every week here in about the past month. So when I say we're dry, we're dry. And hopefully we get some rain here next week. I don't want enough to make up for that 9 inches, but hopefully we get some to kind of give some relief and settle some dust. It's just been miserable out there for everybody. I talked about we've basically been planting for 2 weeks, which you give us 2 hard weeks, we will have a lot of guys done come Saturday and Sunday. They've got lots and lots of beans out. I don't even know how to put a percentage on it, but if you drive around, you will find merged beans somewhere. We got corn spiking. Nothing crazy on the corn front, but as of this week, there is plenty of rolling everywhere running hot and heavy. So really, we're just waiting on the rain in the places we can't get it, and then to go ahead and give us some extra moisture in what we've already planted. Our wheat is way ahead. Like we talked about it being warm. I think the boys said they expect heads to be out here in a week to 10 days for us, which is about 2.5, 3 weeks early. So we're getting ready for head scab applications to come early, especially with this moisture coming in. And that's about it. Just there's no cotton or ice going in the ground yet. We still got a couple weeks on it yet. So that's just about my wrap up there.
Okay. Mr. Wilburn,
Yeah, did you see me flicking the tick off?
I wasn't sure what you were doing there, but
It was a tick.
oh, okay.
It was one of the old school ones. I've got to where you pay more attention, make sure it's not one of the fancy Lone Star ones that cause all the problem, but hearing of some of those as well, so they're here. Now I feel like I have ticks all over me. We've got a little bit of planting done, mainly on the western side of my region. To the when we had a little bit of a run, had a fair amount of beans go on the ground, and in some cases some corn. As far as really seeing a whole lot up in our area, have not done that yet. I'm going to be out west tomorrow if the weather allows. We should say too, this is the 9th of April, afternoon, 9th of April. If you want to put a date to some of the things we're talking about. If the weather holds off, I'll be out west tomorrow, and I think I will see a little bit of crop that maybe is just now poking through the ground. But a lot of my folks, are either they've got corn and beans that are just germinating when they dig them up and look. But for the most part, still waiting on a lot of it to even be planted, especially on the eastern side of the state. A lot of our activity has been in the wheat fields. We're probably 3 weeks ahead on our wheat crop. Right now, again, it's the 9th of April. I always tell folks in our part of the world, it seems like kind of that into that first week or going into the second week is when we generally joint. And, we've been there for a couple of weeks now. So we're at least 2-3 weeks ahead on the wheat crop. It's just enough to kind of make things exciting. A couple of weeks ago, we wrote about this, or I wrote about it in kind of my weekly update, but I don't think we've had a podcast since. Really feeling like we might have lucked out. Been pretty fortunate how we dodged a bullet on the wheat freeze, the events that we had. The first one, when we went from basically 90 degrees to single digits in just a couple days, there a few weeks back. Most of the wheat that I looked at was not far enough along to, it was not jointed. We didn't even have hollow stem at that point. So we should have been protected. And the way that I told folks, I said, by the book, we should have been okay. But boy, that was extreme. So, if we later on see a little bit here and there, I won't be surprised, but it really did. It looked like most of that was not far along to be affected by that temperature. Now the fields looked pretty rough. We had a lot of burnt foliage but really by rights, that was a stage of the wheat development that if we were, technically we could have still been grazing it. Now in some cases, I think we did have a little bit of loss here and there, just in small areas, just where, for whatever reason, a small little, a foot of row here or there, got really rank and just completely fell over and almost smothered the plant out. It seemed like, saw a little bit of that, but not enough to really greatly affect, any one particular field. I think it was the following week where we dipped back down into the 20s, and even then we kind of stayed 24 degrees. At that point we were jointed. 24 degrees was kind of the magic number we were watching, and it seemed like the coolest spots were around 26, 27, and even then they bounced off of it pretty quick. Didn't spend enough time down there to cause a lot of issues. So, and then this last, what's today, Thursday? I was watching for about a week there. I think Tuesday morning, it was cool, but as we got closer and closer to that morning, it was a little warmer than even predicted, rather. So for all of the wheat jumping ahead, picking up the heat units early and really being at a pretty scary point for the weather we were getting, I really feel like we were fortunate and dodged a bullet. Split all kinds of plants over the last couple of weeks looking at heads. I have yet to see a head that just that I had concern for. And I've been through events where we, 20 years ago, we had one that hit right about this time of year. and the wheat was jointed, and I think we got into the low 20s for 2 nights in a row, and then the third night it got down to 14 or 15, and we had damage. So I've seen the damage and seen what it can do, and I'm not seeing anything like that. But like I told a few people, there's for all the heads we've split, there's 4 or 5 million per acre, and I'd be surprised if we don't see a little something out there. But overall, feeling pretty positive about it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo a little bit of what these other guys have been talking about here. Obviously, temperatures, even in the northern part of our territory, have been a little bit warmer than normal for the year. To that point, we're probably seeing a little bit more weed pressure and everything kind of taking off as well. So, some of those summer annuals, we've got soil temperatures that are well into the mid 50s and everything at this point. So, we're finding some water infemerge, ragweed, and all the summer annuals. It's something you don't want to necessarily take lightly, right? I mean, we oftentimes may take some of that for granted as we get started planting and everything kind of gets rolling, get beans put in the ground and corn put in the ground, and then come back with, that first application. I'd be cautious of doing that this year, I guess. We've had a few planters kind of roll. Actually, a lot of that probably what has been planted happened a little bit sooner than what we would normally see. I know there were some beans that kind of got put in the ground mid-March. And then there was, probably up until here the end of last week, we got a little bit of a rain shower finally because we'd been pretty dry up this direction here as well. And in a lot of ways still are as far as subsoil moisture and some of those things there are concerned, but pretty dry up to that point. Kind of got that rain, temperatures cooled back off, and it kind of kept the planters in the shed, I think, for the most part here, beginning part of the week. I know there's a few guys trying to get started now, which is probably going to be a pretty short window because I think we're supposed to get another shot of rainfall here tonight. Just keep that in mind, as we get going here, before you get too busy and slam 1,000 acres of crop in the ground. Let's make sure we're doing it right and getting some of these burn down applications applied and getting a residual out there to protect from, the loss that we can see from early season weed competition. Some of these winter annuals and stuff, we clean up pretty easy with 2,4-D and glyphosate. So we don't worry about it a whole lot. But when you got water hemp that's already emerged and we've got 80-degree days, and it's going to get some size to it pretty quick. So don't neglect the residual piece of this management here. Make sure you're getting the things cleaned up, especially where we haven't made fall applications. Kind of to echo Scott on some of the wheat, that's still predominantly what we're seeing. We're staying busy doing up here is looking at a lot of wheat crop. We're probably, for me talking about what's been planted, I mean, I'd say if we're have 10% of our acres planted here in the northern part of our territory, that'd be something. I don't think we're quite that far along yet, but on a lot of this wheat, we were kind of similar to central Missouri there, except probably not quite as far along. Maybe got a little bit colder. Some of the wheat that was maybe a little bit more developed, we could see a little bit of some stand loss in some pockets, or maybe lost that primary shoot, but for the most part, really lucked out. That being said, I mean, a lot of our wheat at this point, we're kind of we're at jointing, or, some of that wheat's maybe getting ready to set its second node, but some of the later planted stuff may still just be at hollow stem and not actually set the first node yet, but still an important time, especially with some of the rains and stuff we've got forecasted and coming here, and just make sure any nitrogen applications that still need to be made for nutrient needs as far as the crop is concerned, make sure we're getting those out, addressing any sulfur needs. I know that's usually one that we can tend tend to forget about until it's, we start seeing the yellowing and interveinal chlorosis on the crop. And by that time, it's already costing us yield, right? So, make sure you're thinking about that and making those applications now, getting any of the herbicide applications wrapped up. So, another thing just to kind of consider, I mean, I think a lot of people are aware and know that, but if you're running across those fields and making applications, maybe putting the skinnies on the spreader or the sprayer would be wise, because running over that crop now is gonna, if that growing point's above the ground, you're gonna kill it out. So it's kind of what we've got going up here.
All right. Well, good stuff. I've got, I'm obviously down here in the southwest part of the state. I'm not a staff agronomist, although I did stay at a Holiday Inn on Tuesday night. But thankfully, the help of our crop consultants and local agronomists, they kind of gave us some updates on what's going on down here. And most of it's pretty similar to what y'all are seeing statewide. Not a lot of difference. Corn's up to V2, seeing some wheat with flag leaves and a little bit of cutworm in the field. So, I guess that rolls into maybe a question I'll throw back at you all. We are considerably warm, and we mentioned this before we hit record again, is that, it is April 9th and it feels like it's May 9th or even later. And so people kind of get that itch and they start running hard and doing a lot of things. And there's still potential for early spring weather to set in and maybe have some detrimental effects to our crops or to our management. So I guess I'll throw it back to you all real quick. What would be some recommendations to growers out there that, the weather we're sitting in, the conditions we have, but knowing we are still early April, is there anything from a, disease pressure standpoint people need to be aware of, or just, crop management? It seems like we're in an abnormal place with our weather sitting in early April. It seems like there could be some things that sneak up on us that we may not be aware of.
I guess I think of, and that's a good lead in up to some things even I forgot to mention. Just with, where we've already accumulated heat units, the wheat's obviously farther along, up here. I don't think I mentioned kind of where we were staged. We're anywhere from 2 to 3 nodes, depending on where you're at across central. But I know the boys down in the southwest, they've got the flag leaf out in some places. I think we'll see some of that, shortly. In central, particularly out west. I mean, it's just everything's a little faster, is a little further along rather out there, and progressing seems like a little faster. And I mean, the weather where we're still kind of mucky on the eastern side of the state. I was out of Higginsville coming back last night and planters were rolling. So I mean, they've just the weather's been a little bit different, and absolutely the soils are a little more forgiving. So some of that stuff's just going on to continue. It's continuing to progress. The wheat is just racing. In fact, I brought some wheat back from out that way to show one of my folks in the Mexico area, just how much of a difference there was in 2 hours, down I-70. But with that, we're gonna be just around the corner. Heads will be emerging, and Miravis and the things we're doing to protect from scab or fusarium head blight. I mean, that's right around the corner. So we need to. Been telling folks that, but this is a good spot to also just remind people and start getting your plans together and get your product lined up. And, if you're flying or you're droning or ground rig or whatever, just kind of have your plans together. Weevil, for the guys with alfalfa, I mean, again, we've accumulated heat units. We're seeing some of that a little earlier than normal. Cutworm, some of that was actually pretty bad. I mean, it sounded like in some of the crop in Southwest Missouri that one of our guys was in. Just be mindful of that. We've been getting those alerts for probably the last week to 10 days, through the universities, where they're trapping. Be mindful of that as you're laying product out ahead of your corn. In some cases, if you're doing a burn down ahead of corn, just keep in mind those places that you're burning down are very attractive to moths. So there may be something to be said for going ahead and having a pyrethroid in with one of those. And just be preventive, particularly if you're coming right behind it. So all of those things that a lot of times are a little further in the season. I mean, we're already dealing with them. I probably missed something, but those were the main ones that were on my mind.
Yeah, and I think that, not only is everybody racing right now to get crops in the ground, but if this weather continues, especially from the wheat side, you brought up a good point there, Scott, to really start planning, those over the top applications that we're going to be needing, because if weather holds like it is, it's going to be, it's going to be a tight window to try to get some of that stuff in, and everybody's going to be wanting to do it at the same time. And so, yeah, that's good stuff there. Well, anything else, gentlemen? All right. Well, we'll keep it short and sweet, and appreciate you joining us. Appreciate everyone listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to Made for Agriculture, brought to you by MFA, your whole farm solution.